So on the one hand, I am frustrated because this report is exactly what I expected and what I told you at the top of the show. And here we are in real time. The report drops. I'm on the air, and we get to look over the executive summary. The executive summary tells you everything you kind of need to know about this, and I'll dig into the 490 pages or so of the whole thing tonight. But the bureaucracy protects itself. They did not find that there was any big problem here. Just some mistakes, just some errors. Human error. It happens, man. Stuff happens. It's complicated. You have to wonder, what would it take for people in the FBI to think that there was a real problem? What would political bias look like? People like Page and Strzok writing each other messages about an insurance policy if Trump would win, about how Trump supporters are smelly and Trump is a blanking this and a blanking that. And these are people involved in investigating Trump associates for the FBI. And they're that stupid. They're that reckless that they would put that on official devices that go into the official record. But we're supposed to believe that all the decisions they made, which are always anti-Trump, which always go toward assisting the investigation meant to destroy his presidency, it was always accidental. They didn't really want that to happen. It just sort of happened. They didn't really want there to be this problem. It just, stuff, gets in the way. Well, the good news, I do have some good news for you. This is meaningful. This is from U.S. Attorney John Durham. You might be asking, who's that guy we talked about? Oh, yes, that's right. The U.S. Attorney from Connecticut, who has been asked by the Department of Justice to look into all of this, to do his own investigation of DOJ practices here as it pertains to the whole Russia collusion mess. And here is what the U.S. Attorney's Office from the District of Connecticut, the statement of U.S. Attorney John H. Durham. Durham, by the way, remember this, both sides have been very clear up to this point. They're going to change their tune soon on the left. The Democrats are all going to start saying, oh, he's a terrible person. He's a liar. He's a Trump stooge. This guy's a prosecutor's prosecutor, a record, unblemished, unlike Comey and these other clowns, a record unblemished by any misconduct or politicization. He is considered a prosecutor's prosecutor, a dogged investigator, and a very, very honest man. And that's really what we are looking for here. Honest people in this process. Here is the statement from U.S. Attorney John Durham's office. I have the utmost respect for the mission of the Office of Inspector General and the comprehensive work that went into the report prepared by Mr. Horowitz and his staff. However, our investigation is not limited to developing information from within component parts of the Justice Department. Our investigation has included developing information from other persons and entities, both in the U.S. and outside of the U.S. Based on the evidence collected to date, and while our investigation is ongoing, last month we advised the Inspector General that we do not agree with some of the report's conclusions as to predication and how the FBI case was opened. This is John Durham saying, okay, Obama administration appointee Horowitz, by the way, okay, bull crap. This investigation was legitimate. Bull crap. There were not people outside, perhaps not just the DOJ, outside the United States, who had a hand in creating this conspiracy theory, this false narrative that was then turned into a massive investigation. This is not over, my friends. This is not over by a long shot. Barr and Durham have been out meeting with, talking with sources all across the world, all over the globe, that were involved in this process. How could a conspiracy theory get this much support, get so far that it made its way to the top of the FBI and the Department of Justice? A completely false story was used as the basis for an investigation, and we are supposed to accept that that's just fine. Think about what this means going forward for political oppo research. Oh, all you need are some government officials to run with some conspiracy, and you can just tap the phones of your rivals. You can have their campaign staffers' emails read. You can have the entire press corps running around saying that something happened that didn't happen, and then when they're caught, just say, oh, well, look, the FBI, the DOJ, they thought it happened too. This whole thing is absolutely disgusting and disgraceful. And that there is a sense right now, you can tell from the Russia collusion hoax crowd, that this is an exoneration for what happened. No, this just shows you how completely and utterly discredited this whole process of the FISA court really is. This just shows you that in the FBI, all they need is a piece of paper from someone paid to make up stuff about somebody, and they'll take that and they'll show that to a FISA court, totally unvetted, totally unsourced, and then they'll get a warrant out on you. Think about what this means. How hard could it be going forward if you want to dig up dirt on somebody and do so illicitly? All you have to do is pay some foreigner who has a buddy at the FBI, and he shows up with this piece of paper. He's like, yeah, it's what a bunch of people told me. And then they take it to a court and they say, yeah, we're going to, based on all this. You know, when I worked at the CIA, there were people sometimes who would show up and they would say, you know, they'd show up at some U.S. government installation somewhere, you know, a military base, an embassy, whatever, and they basically say the equivalent of, you know, Osama bin Laden is hiding under my bed. And someone somewhere would have to, you know, okay, well, we've got this tip or whatever. When I worked at the NYPD, we had a tip line. You know, we had a tip line for terrorist attacks. By the way, didn't really get any particularly interesting tips. But the point is, we had a tip line there, and people, you know, would call in, and they would say that, you know, I think there's going to be a big terrorist attack from a guy who is dressed as Elvis, and I'm really scared, and I think he's wearing a suicide vest, and he's, you know, streaking across Met Stadium right now. And you realize that this person's like deranged and needs help. They need to. This is an EDP, they'd call it, an emotionally disturbed person. But, you know, people would call in. Would it be okay if the NYPD was like, oh gosh, we got to look for the Elvis impersonator suicide bomber, guys, and put out an APB. We got to find him. We think, what is wrong with the law enforcement? You guys are a bunch of idiots. You have no judgment. You have no sense of what's real and what's not. You're just going to fall into, well, the reason. See, this is the problem. It's not about Elvis. It's that they hate Elvis in this analogy. That's the real problem. So they'll take this as an excuse. That's what the FBI, that's what the DOJ did. There were people that really hated Trump. There's no question. Trump calls them out. Trump calls out the establishment. He calls out the swamp. And this was an opportunity for some of those people who have built whole careers being, you know, generally frustrated, in their minds underpaid and feckless little bureaucrats. This was a chance to get even the score against Trump, or to slow him down, or to stop him, or to prevent him from ruining the country, whatever it was. The fact, though, that the Attorney General the U.S. Attorney in Connecticut doesn't agree that this investigation was legitimate, that's the report that's going to be much more interesting to many of us, is why was the investigation rather illegitimate? Because we know that it was. The whole thing's a hoax. Remember, they keep treating this like it's an investigation of something that was legitimate. And because they went through a legitimate process, it doesn't matter that it's an illegitimate investigation. No, I'm sorry. This whole thing never should have happened. Never should have happened. And yet here we are being told that, oh, because they went through a process, they lied in the process, they omitted in the process, they made mistakes in the process, but because they went through it, everything is fine. I have to wonder, my friends, you know, how much longer we have to keep pretending that the Department of Justice and the FBI are well-functioning organisms that should be allowed to continue without massive restructuring and new oversight. Because if they can be turned into weapons of politics, then we don't really have free and fair elections. Then we don't have a system of elected governance that we've been led to believe we do. We no longer have the republic because we have not been able to keep it. That's what we face if we don't actually rein in the FBI and the DOJ. Everyone needs to understand that. This is completely outrageous. and that the Inspector General has no harsh words, but he also had no harsh words for the Hillary email thing, which was also an outrage. This guy Horowitz is completely and utterly bereft of good judgment and fairness in this process. Protecting the institution, protect the deep state, protect the swamp. That's what's happened. They couldn't run from all the facts. They had to say, yeah, there's problems here and there. Why were there all these problems? Why 17 major omissions in the Carter Page FISA? You're going to tell me it was that's just sloppiness? You're doing an end run on somebody's basic Fourth Amendment protections because, oh my gosh, national security. I mean, it's really, we've created this extra legal, it's technically legal, but when people realize what this is, it's just, yeah, we think we need to pull all your stuff because national security. The fact that that isn't treated with more sensitivity, that's not viewed as a greater risk for abuse, is absurd. 17 errors? We'll have to see. We'll have to see how this shakes out with the Durham report. But they don't agree that this was an investigation that even should have happened. They don't agree. Remember that. So Republican Representative Jim Banks sent a letter on Friday that asked Attorney General Bill Barr to enforce laws restricting the use of obscene pornography. The letter was signed by Banks, Republican North Carolina Representative Mark Meadows, Republican Missouri Representative Vicky Hartzler, a couple others. Urges the Attorney General to enforce federal obscenity laws and prioritize the prosecution of pornography producers and distributors. Obscenity is not protected under the First Amendment according to the Department of Justice, and violations of federal obscenity laws are criminal offenses. Federal law criminalizes the distribution, transportation, shipping, selling, mailing, and producing with intent to sell or distribute obscene matter. This is all from the Daily Caller. And this resulted, this whole, should they start enforcing laws against pornography? That's what this led to over the weekend. A big fight among conservatives that got, I say, very heated on this issue. I was surprised to see some people really going after others that they generally agree with on a wide range of issues. But on this, all of a sudden, there's definitely a sense that, I don't know, it was people were pretty intense on this one. People did not appreciate that there is a good faith, good faith beliefs on both sides of the conservative debate over what to do about pornography. Look, I think that this is pretty straight. Well, I shouldn't say it's pretty straightforward. I have some basic views on this. One is I think that pornography is harmful, and I think that people trying to avoid it are doing themselves a service. I think that people obviously keeping their kids from being able to see this, which anybody who's 13 or 14 years old with an internet connection can access this stuff. I think that they're making the right move. I think that it does desensitize people to sexuality, to sensuality. I think that it does promote negative objectification of women. I think it also, if people look at enough pornography, I think it can start to have a damaging impact on the actual the way that your brain processes certain things. So I'm opposed to pornography, and I appreciate those who want to crack down on it in the sense that they make it at least harder for people to stumble across. One thing, one problem that I think a lot of people have is, even if you just do a basic search, if you look, you type in Trump porn ban, and you're like, what's Google gonna, you want to find the news story, but you don't want to see all of a sudden a bunch of boobies popping up on your screen, right? So it's everywhere. Pornography's everywhere. It's all over the internet. But I do think that it's a laudable goal to try to limit its reach but you're going to start locking people up and putting them in prison for this. You're going to have a massive expansion of the state. You're going to have a lot of people that are going to go and have to fight this in court. You start to ask, okay, well, what constitutes specifically pornography and obscenity? And this is where we get into the First Amendment debate. We've been through this many times. Do people think that even things that would be aired, for example, on HBO would constitute pornography? Would you be able to watch Game of Thrones? Can that be distributed, even though there's not specifically sex acts occurring? There are simulated sex acts, and now you get to, okay, so is that... it becomes very hard to draw clear lines about how you would... Remember, we're talking about criminalizing this, not just... Those who want to limit access, I can understand, and I think that that's a good thing. I think that the social media platforms have to do a much better job than they have done of making sure that people do not, this doesn't pop up and they don't see the stuff that they don't want to see. I mean, it should be pretty straightforward to have better filters in place, and certainly to protect kids from seeing this stuff. But when you're talking about criminalizing the sale and distribution of this, you're going to put people in prison because they're selling, videos of porn star Jenna Jameson, or that's... You're going to put them in prison for this? I have to say, I think that that's probably... this is one of these conversations that I think is interesting, and it's also quite clear where it's going to go. This is not going to happen. But it does raise a broader... Meaning they're not going to start cracking down on people for selling pornographic videos and things that are, between consenting adults. Obviously, we have very strict laws, and we should, about any pornography that is objectifying or threatening or involving people who are underage in any way. And those are enforced rigorously, and the penalties for those are severe, and understandably so. But we're talking about people who are of age, who are engaging in sex acts as a commercial enterprise. I mean, who are we going to... You're going to lock up the people distributing the video, the people making the video, the people engaged in the sex act itself. I just, everyone has their... Everyone that I've seen debating this in conservative realm, I'm just talking about conservatives. Never mind. Liberals are generally like, yeah, porn's fine. They don't care. It doesn't bother them for whatever reason. But on the conservative side of things, I never see a uniformity of where the lines are drawn and how severely punished people should really be, and what that would mean going forward. And also, you're never going to eliminate the masses of pornography that people have already downloaded for their own private use, and it's just not going to happen. But this was a big debate over the weekend. Everyone's, we're going to ban porn. We got to ban pornography. This state exists to promote the common good, and this is an issue of the common good. And like I said, I'm sympathetic to that. I do think that it's a good idea, even for adult males. Just ban pornography from your own life. Just stay away from it. Don't look at it. Don't make it a part of what you do and what you spend your time on, because it is damaging to even, I think, generally well-adjusted people's views of sexuality and women, especially over time. And with I advocate, impose your own a self-imposed ban on pornography for adults. If there are ways to work with the social media platforms so that kids have less access to this stuff, less easy access to it, I totally appreciate and respect that. I think that's a good idea. But I don't think anybody's going to start throwing people in prison anytime soon for selling adult videos. Well, there are adult channels you can buy with major cable providers right now.
When I started a news business in my company, I hired somebody outside. Their job is to run the news organization. Their job is to set the ethics. I think people have said to me, how can you investigate yourself? And I said, I don't think you can. Mm-hmm. But if you take a look at the Bloomberg News Organization, we carry news from lots of different places, like New York Times and the Wall Street Journal and the Washington Post. There's plenty of ways for people to get news about the candidates if they look at Bloomberg News.
But even your own news reporters have complained. They think it's unfair that they're not allowed to investigate other Democratic candidates because they're bosses in the race.
You just have to learn to live with some things.
Okay.
They get a paycheck, but with your paycheck comes some restrictions and responsibilities.
Bloomberg's basically like, look, journalism, schmurnalism, I pay their bills, they're going to do what I say. Here's maybe a slightly unpopular take on this. I prefer this approach. I'm not saying I think that Bloomberg's decision is right, but I would just rather everybody understand that the guys who are writing the checks for all these journalists, they can tell them what to do. Very rarely Do you see a journalist who is willing to risk their, $200,000 a year job at Bloomberg, the Bloomberg editorial desk or whatever, so that they can be true and honest and, all that stuff to their journalistic ethics? Very rarely. Very rarely. Now people, look, and I get it. I get it. Papa Buck needs a new pair of shoes too, man. I mean, people got to do what they got to do to pay the mortgage. But let's just all be honest about it. This is why I tell you things like I don't criticize friends on my show, because my friendships matter to me more than the day-to-day news cycle of there are, of course, exceptions, right? If somebody that I'm friendly with is all of a sudden, in ill repute for something they've done and it's a big news story. But I don't get into the spat, the back and forth with people that I'm friendly with because I disagree with them on something. But I tell you that so that you know it. So you don't have to send me messages. Hey, Buck, why aren't you out there trashing somebody who says that they think that Trump is going to, Trump is a dictator or something? And if you know that I'm friendly with that person, then you probably know why. I prefer that honesty. I remember years ago when Tucker Carlson was, I think he still is in the Daily Caller in some capacity, but he was editor-in-chief of the Daily Caller. And I remember when people got all mad at him because he said that he tells his employees that he works for Fox News. He's the editor-in-chief. You can't trash Fox News. But that wasn't that was an open policy. And all these journalists are, oh, that's terrible. No, I agree with that approach. That's just reality. Would journalists who write for the Washington Post trash Jeff Bezos? Come on. Let's all be adults. Let's all be honest about this. So I just think it's kind of funny that everyone's also... And the problem I have with what Bloomberg is doing is he's not just saying you can't criticize me because I'm your boss. He's saying, well, you can't go after Democrats, but you can go after Republicans, but we're still a journalistic enterprise, neutral, nonpartisan. It's a lie. Bloomberg is a lib. The people that work for him are libs. The enterprise, of Bloomberg News is liberal dominated. And this is we should just have honesty in this. It would be better for everybody. It would be better for everybody involved in this. And I prefer it if we could expect that we would be told what's really going on here, instead of having to always just say, oh, but what about the fact that we have in journalism schools, people are taught to be, no, it's all crap. It's all nonsense. All right. They're activists. They're partisans. Bloomberg is full of partisans. And Mayor Bloomberg telling everybody what he really thinks about all these different things. So there you have it. Let's get to producer Brandon. Let's get to roll call because I missed the team. I want to hear from them.
It's time for roll call.
Roll call, everybody. Let's get to it, shall we? Team Buck at iHeartMedia.com if you want to be in on the action. And you can also send it to Facebook.com/Buck Sexton. And please, team, keep spreading the word about the show. We need more and more folks to listen to the podcast. That would be fantastic. And you grow that audience. James writes in first. Longtime fan and listener from the Shaggin' Wagon days, which is a reference to the Buckster on Red Eye in the early days of Bucktopia. When Senate goes to impeachment trial, if this whistleblower anonymity is still running, why can't Republicans just subpoena bureaucrat Eric Sharamelas and pretend they don't know he's the guy, just another witness like those Ukraine diplomats who testified at Schiff's show trial? James in California. James, I think they can. I think they should. I think that is what should happen, that we should see what this guy's phone records are. Yeah, that's right. We can use the process too. Let's see if he talked to Adam Schiff before the report came out. Who wants to guess that he did? Here we go. We have Paul who writes, Buck, if you know of a great author working on a good book on socialism, here's something that might reestablish that burning focus and passion. The deep state runs deep, but to stop it, you have to go to and understand the mindset of a central authority at the very top. Okay. Someday you may be in California. You can buy me a beer and thank me. I might even buy you one and tell you a fishing story that goes back to the Battle of the Bulge. Until then, you got my email. Paul! Shield time, man. Thanks for writing in. Appreciate it. Lowell. Buck, as you build out the best channel on Pluto TV, channel 248, please look at the short clips that Black Rifle Coffee Guys put out. Black Rifle clips are so funny and slam the walls of political correctness. Also, I really like your mix of intellect while holding the middle ground. Producer Brandon is a gentler look at things, and also, you're a little less salty than Producer Mark, Producer Mark is a little bit of like the ombudsman. He's like, Buck, settle down. You're a little more like, hey, man, I'm just here to help. I'm just here to get it done, I also like turkey year-round and strawberry ice cream. Well, no, that's just crazy. That's just unacceptable.
I like this guy.
Yeah, I like this guy too. Producer Mark, I like Producer Mark's honesty. He tends to not care what people think. Keep up the great work in the hut, Lowell. Well, thank you, Lowell. Thanks for writing in, man. And the good news is Producer Mark isn't thinking about us at all. Right now, he's probably got like some serious, like tan lines from the shirt, or I don't know if he's wearing a tank top or whatever, but he's been in Jamaica over a week. He probably scorched.
Too long.
Yeah, he's been gone doing his thing. Cat, Buck, I've been enjoying your show via podcast for some time, but this week I tried out Pluto TV on my Oculus Quest virtual reality headset. That sounds super fancy. Pluto doesn't make it obvious on their website this is an option, and in fact, when you try to create an account that's not one of the devices listed, but it does work quite well. The Buck Sexton show was my impetus for trying it out, and I'm glad I did. It's a fun way to get my political news fix, and I enjoyed seeing the famous beard at last. Indeed. Although Brandon's beard is like out of the show Vikings or something. My beard is a little more like Peaky Blinders. Like I could be one of the young up-and-coming thugs from Peaky Blinders that lives in Birmingham.
I got to keep it trimmed, though, because otherwise I look like a rabbi, and that's just not the look I'm going for.
Fair enough.
Just being honest.
By the way, do take the plunge and go ahead and cut the cord. I did it 20 years ago, and when I married my now 84-year-old husband 13 years ago, I persuaded him to do it. We can get any shows we want over the net, and it's great. Cheers, Kat. Kat, thank you so much. That's cool about the Oculus thing, by the way. I did not know about that. Craig and Tanya writing in together. Team Craig, Tanya. Buck, thanks for plugging Master and Commander today. Fantastic movie that captured a really fantastic series by Patrick O'Brien. If you haven't read it, you really must. It's written in the style of 19th century novels with period dialogue and a lot of nautical vocabulary, so it takes a while to adjust to, but worth the effort. Aim for the waterline, Craig. Well, Craig, I'm so glad you enjoyed it, man. Master and Commander is a great movie. Whenever I tell you guys, go home this weekend and watch a movie, I'm always telling you something that's amazing. That's a great movie that I speak very highly of because I'm right. Marina, it's so nice to have producer Brandon back. I didn't realize how much I missed his voice, humor, and laugh. Wow. Producer Brandon, huh?
That made me feel good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Marina is writing into producer Brandon.
I appreciate that. I'm very cautious of, I don't know about you when you listen to other radio shows, but laughs, because sometimes a laugh is a real turnoff, especially if they laugh at their own jokes.
Oh, yeah. No, and some people have a really annoying laugh. It can be a problem.
Oh, yeah. So,
even in the single man dating world, I can tell you that, if you have somebody who's having things go on all of a sudden, she's like, you really, it's like that laugh is not good. That's going to be a problem because then you don't want to make them laugh. And so then all of my funniness or humor, a better way of saying funniness, a more correct way, then it gets suppressed because I don't want them to make the horrible laugh sound anymore. Have you ever been around a really bad laugher?
Oh, yeah.
Because there's also contagious laughers. Like there are people that their laugh is so fun and kind of, that you kind of want to laugh too. And but there's also bad laughers.
The loud laughers when you're just out in public and you kind of get embarrassed. Yeah.
See, I've also been to events where there's somebody who's got just like a crazy hyena laugh, and they laugh a lot, and it's like you need to settle down with that crazy hyena laugh. That's not a good thing. Dennis writes in, Buck, you had me cracking up with something about Mary reference. What other classic comedy movies would not be PC in today's era? Oh, man, dude. You couldn't get away with Aladdin, the animated film today, without people freaking out. No way. You couldn't make that movie. You couldn't. Every Robin Williams movie you have probably ever seen that is a comedy. I mean, not Good Will Hunting, but, that's a comedy. I'm sure he does an accent that's, not a Caucasian, white person's accent on some person from somewhere else around the world, some, non-white accent. I mean, he would be in trouble. There's no way he'd be allowed to do that anymore.
I think all the great comedies of all time. Think about all the Mel Brooks movies. You think Blazing Saddles could be put out today?
No.
No?
No way.
It's awful.
Yeah. I mean, even probably, Airplane. I mean, you think about some of the true classics.
All the Naked Gun movies.
Yeah,
all the Naked Gun movies.
Liberals, I mean, wokeness has killed comedy. It really has. I mean, you're not allowed to be funny anymore. Nothing's allowed to be funny anymore. Everything is about intersectionality and oppression and, this group and that group. Dennis also writes, by the way, I've never had audio issues. Audio problems are a sham, like this impeachment. Yeah, Dennis, shields high. I like it. Dennis is like, people need to stop pretending there's all these audio. I'm sure people do have audio issues, but I don't know what we can do to fix it. Roy writes, I'm a few days behind the podcast, but I just heard you talking about playing GoldenEye on Nintendo 64 and wrecking everyone as Odd Job. Playing as Odd Job is cheating. Everybody's getting on me because I used to play with Odd Job. Look, Odd Job's a person too in this video game, all right? Let's not negate him. He's so short that the game's targeting system doesn't register him and bullets fly over his head. Love the show, but if you want to brag about your GoldenEye skills, you've got to use regular characters. This is like the third email I've gotten about this, by the way. Look, just because I would wreck all of you fools in GoldenEye Nintendo 64, doesn't mean that, you get to write in and call out Odd Job, all right? Damn it. That game was amazing, though, back in the day. It really was. Taylor writes, hey, Buck, I love your show. Listen to it daily now, either on the way home or at work or at the gym. I heard about the Intel committee and AT&T phone record subject. Maybe you should try looking at who's on the board of directors at AT&T first and start from there. It seems like somebody at the top may have just approved it as a favor. That company likes to look good for donations to different groups to not look bad in the public eye. I'd start poking around at the top and see where it came from. Well, Taylor, that all sounds like a good idea. I just don't know how much time I really have to dig into all of that. So we will have to see. But thank you, though. It's a valid point. There's only so many tasks I can give producer Brandon here before, what is your preferred, like on the weekend, my happy place is in my pajamas, on my couch, about to watch something good on Netflix with some form of, international takeout food like Thai or Vietnamese or something like that, That's my happy place. What is your happy place?
You're close to it, but instead of international food, it would be like cookies and milk.
Yeah.
Again, I'm a 10-year-old.
Chocolate chip cookies are the best.
Yeah,
though, right?
no, as soon as I get home.
You're not like an oatmeal raisin person, right? Because those people need to be locked up.
No, what am I, communist? No.
No, that's crazy.
The worst is when you grab a cookie that's not labeled, thinking it's chocolate chip, and you take that first bite, and it's oatmeal raisin. I
know. I feel like your mouth has been defrauded.
Like
I want to call the FBI on that fake chocolate chip cookie.
You just want to go home at that point.
I'm totally with you. It's crazy. Ken writes, Buck, OSS and U.S. Air Force fighter pilot here, vet. Love the show and all you do for our country and for veterans. 2 constructive criticisms with you about the audio. Same thing with it's the podcast, AirPods, roll call music. But I haven't noticed it since producer Mark has been on his honeymoon. Producer Brandon rocks and seems less arrogant than Mark. Shields high. Oh, no. We have a producer feud in the mix. Oh, no. What's going to happen? He's on vacation.
Quarterback controversy.
I mean, I'm just, I know it's like the backup is putting up some good numbers on the board. What are we going to do here, folks? Oh, no. Producer Brandon is Tom Brady, and Mark is, he was a great quarterback. That he was it Bledsoe he was behind?
Yeah,
or?
Drew, look at you, Mr. I kind of know sports.
I kind of know some sports stuff sometimes.
Drew Bledsoe turned down Dan Marino's position, a role, I should say, in Ace Ventura.
Really?
Think of what that would have done for him in his career.
I don't know why he would turn. That's a great.
He thought it was stupid.
Oh man, I mean that was when Jim Carrey was actually funny and really at the height of his powers. Dude, Ace Ventura is an incredible. By the way, movies you could never make today. Ace Ventura, there would be riots in the streets.
Yeah,
with the whole
Captain Winky.
The character with all that stuff going. You would never be able to make that. All the fun, Dumb and Dumber. You'd never be able to make that movie anymore. No way.
How sad.
Doesn't he give like a dead parakeet to a blind girl or something? Right? Like
I took care of it.
Yeah, you'd never be able to do this.
You're
Anyway.
right.
But I still think the one that would be considered the most offensive of the great comedies is There's Something About Mary. Although, I could pull apart. You could do like Mystery Science Theater, 2,000 or 5,000.
3,000.
3,000?
Close.
Whatever, yeah. You could do that, but like with wokeness and just be like, oh, this is terrible. Look what they're doing to this. I don't know if that would be funny or not, but it'd be a thing to do. All right. Well, it was a good day for producer Brandon today. Producer Mark, you better get back soon.
Thanks, guys.
All right, you all team. Shields high.